Hi everyone, welcome. Well, we're back in my African nightcrawler systems, and I'm gonna tend to the mites again, like I've been doing for the past week or so now. The cantaloupe has done a really excellent job rounding up the mites, and then more recently these pineapple chunks have, they seem to have done a pretty good job getting them to come together too. But these pieces have pretty much, I think, gotten to their end already. So I've dug into my stash and I got myself a couple fresh pieces of cantaloupe out of the freezer. So I'm going to replace the ones that are in there now so that the baiting of these mites can continue. And I've been feeling that the moisture in these bins is really lacking at this point. I believe that that's probably one of the main reasons we see so many worms coming up for the bait. I'm not so sure that they're as interested in the melon or the pineapple as they are in the moisture that's held within those pieces of fruit. So I've got my squirt bottle. I was going to apply some moisture just in general to the material in the bins and give these poor worms a little bit of a break. And then another thing that people have been recommending a lot, and I figured I'd give it a try, is just blending in a little bit more of this diatomaceous earth. I'd already given these bins one treatment of the stuff, but I figured, what the heck, I got this stuff here, let's blend some of it in. Maybe it'll help. So let's get to work. For these African nightcrawler segments pertaining to the mite infestation, I've been filming with my phone just because it's got the built-in light and because it does allow me to get pretty close up to the subject matter and get some really good shots. So usually I'm filming with my camera on a tripod, but here I'm using my free hand to film with. So here and there I might need to just put the camera, i.e. the phone, down on occasion just to do certain things. But you know, I think you'll get the idea. So for example, I need to put the phone down so I could spray materials and stir at the same time with my gloved hand, then we'll do that. And boy, oh boy, these worms have pretty much stripped all of the meaty, fleshy part of this melon off. And I think at this point there's so little left, I'm just going to go ahead and bury this thin piece of melon rind under the surface of the material and just let the worms have at the rest of it down low. And it almost seems like the worms have almost all congregated to this one section of the bin where I guess there's still a little hint of moisture. And I think we're going to try to give them a little bit of a break at this point and try to dampen the rest of the material out around the area where I'm trying to bait the mites out of the bin. But in the process of trying to be sympathetic to the worms, let's not forget about the main mission here, right? There's not a lot of mites on this paper, and there's no mites on here either, and I think that's just because the mites couldn't get at it because the worms were feeding on it. So we do have some mites gathering on these couple pieces of pineapple, which I can rinse off, and then we'll restore it onto, I think, a fresh piece of paper too, because this paper is shot. So I think that this old paper, this old cantaloupe rind, we'll just kind of bury that below the surface, and then we'll do a reset on the baiting station. All these worms, I think, all coming just for the moisture. Right beneath where we've been baiting, the material looks really nice. It's got a nice crumbly texture to it, but still feels damp and cool and comfortable. I'm just wondering out here where there's been pretty much nothing covering it. Here, it just seems dangerously dry. And that's probably why there's no worms in it either. So I'm definitely going to apply a whole bunch of moisture to this system, spread it around all over, and maybe at the same time also mix in some diatomaceous earth. I know, stuff only works when it's dry, but whatever. Maybe if some mites get it on themselves and then they crawl up to a dry area, maybe this stuff will have some effect on them. So I'm going to tend to the stuff in here while I put the phone down and stop filming, and then we'll reset here momentarily. So the first thing I did here was I stirred all the really dry stuff with the stuff that was not so dry, and I ended up with kind of a pretty decent material now, not as dry and nasty, a little bit more damp and cool feeling, but still I'm going to proceed now to the, oh yeah, and then I also at the same time was blending in the diatomaceous earth, so I could see little traces of it stuck to the edges everywhere. So I'm just going to go ahead and put the camera down one more time, put the phone down, and give this whole thing a nice dousing of liquid moisture next, and then we're going to reestablish our baiting area. I mean, it is true that we didn't really see a great deal of mites on the bait that we had reset. So maybe things are on the turnaround here in this one bin. But still, I just want to keep at it since I did create such a huge disruption here. And then we'll probably know better in another day or 2 days once we've had a chance for things to kind of settle down. And if mites surface again coming for the bait, then we'll know that it has to continue. Otherwise, we'll also know that we're done. So let me continue here, put the phone down, put the camera down, and put a little bit more of this together the way I had intended. Okay, so I've pretty much emptied almost an entire squirt bottle into this container here. And the material's got a nice dampness to it, finally. And I'm sure the worms are thankful. So there's not much left to do here. I'm just restoring our baiting setup now. Not even so much restoring it at this point as much as pretty much replacing it, right? So we're putting a new piece of paper in here. It's going to be a nice new piece of melon in here to replace the old one that was pretty much destroyed, chewed up already. I guess the only thing we're going to be salvaging and putting back as leftovers are those 2 pieces of pineapple that I rinsed off earlier. Now, I still want this to be below the surface of the material. So I'm going to press it down a bit so that the plastic, when I put it back on, does rest on the surface of the material all the way around, so that we still kind of have that terrarium effect happening under here, which will, you know, make what's under here still a more damp place to be in the bin, more damp than elsewhere in the bin. And then we're just going to restore these really flimsy paper coverings that aren't really doing a whole lot. They're definitely not keeping the moisture in the system, that's for sure. Guess I'm keeping them around just because at some point they'll just be useful as bedding once we get back to feeding these bins. So I've kind of gone through the motions here, gotten a sense of what I want to accomplish. Now it's on to the other bin to do the same. Alright, so I decided that for this bin, I'm just going to go grab my tripod and mount my phone in the tripod. It would just make things so much simpler to be able to do this without having to hold on with one hand. So we're just going to repeat what I just did in the other bin here. And things are a little bit different here, and they're actually might be the early signs of what I've been hoping for a while now, which is just smaller turnouts of mites. You know, because while there are mites on this piece of cantaloupe, it just doesn't nearly seem as much as we'd been seeing in the past. In fact, this piece of cantaloupe might not even require a replacement quite yet, because it is still doing pretty good. Still seems to be doing pretty good. It's interesting how the worms have kind of nestled themselves in the little crevices of this piece of melon here. I'm still thinking, yeah, look at that, they're down inside here. They've really made themselves at home within this piece of melon. There's definitely still meaty material left on this melon. And I'd like to give it a rinse to get rid of some mites. But it almost seems to me like there's even more mites to be found on these two pieces of pineapple. I'm starting to wonder if pineapple really would have been the more optimal bait to use. And look at that, even on this piece of paper. It's just funny how the mites seem to gather a little differently in this bin than they do in the other bin. And you know, it could just be that this bin has more moisture in it. So maybe these worms are actually coming for the melon as food, not so much because of its moisture content. And here the mites, I don't know if it's just a different type of coffee filter paper. Maybe it's that they're enjoying. It's hard to say. But you know, I'm going to go ahead and rinse that piece of paper there because I believe we can reuse it. I'm going to rinse these pieces of pineapple. And, you know, maybe I'll do something fairly similar. Kind of mix in some diatomaceous earth. Not sure if I need to apply water here because I think this bin has got a lot more moisture to it. And then maybe we'll just submerge that piece of melon down low so the worms can get at it. And we'll put the new piece of melon that I've got here out on top. Hopefully that's where the mites will go. So let me go to the sink and give this a rinse, and then we'll come back here and continue. Well, this little worm got lucky. I noticed him in the sink. He must have took a ride on the paper when I went over there to rinse off. But luckily I was able to fish him out of the sink before he got flushed down the drain. So back into the bin with him, and can rejoin the rest of his friends and family. Oops. Oh, but you know what? I think in order for me to do a little stirring in of diatomaceous earth over here, we're going to need to temporarily move some of this stuff off to the side. Just get it out of our way. And then I could do my little DE treatment. I think while we're doing that, we'll also get a chance to see how the moisture situation in general throughout the bin looks. And if it seems like it could use a squirt of water here or there, we'll do it, and if not, then we'll skip it. Because like even out here on the far reaches where there's been no plastic coverings for a while, only paper being left to evaporate, there's still worms hanging out there. So even though the top surface material is a bit dry, the material right below the surface seems like it's in pretty good shape. So I'm not so sure it's necessary to add moisture to this bin. I think once we give the whole thing a stir, some of the material that does seem a bit dry will get combined with some of the material that's still in pretty good shape, and then I think we'll be okay. See, even over here, the top of the surface is a little bit dry, but once you get down a little bit deeper, you're in material that's fairly comfy. Nothing like what we saw in the VermiBag Tote. Over there, it was pretty dreadfully dry, and the spray down probably did wonders for that environment, for the worms. And I think that's got a lot to do with why we're seeing so many worms coming up for the bait in that other one. Because it wasn't even so much the bait that they were coming for, it was the moisture held within that fruit. And here the worms down within the bed just didn't seem as desperate for moisture as the ones over in the VermiBag tote. So we saw many more mites getting at the bait rather than a bunch of worms getting at the bait. Although, you know, I'm starting to wonder, I've got the squirt bottle here, I've got a couple squirts left in it. I didn't refill it, but there is enough in there to perhaps apply a little bit of moisture if we wanted to. What do we got here? It's like a piece of paper or something. So here I am. I'm kind of in that sort of thinking while I'm doing and trying to figure out my next move. I'm just encountering little bits and pieces of some of the old feedings that this bin received 3.5 weeks ago at this point, since the last feeding was applied. It's not surprising that the only stuff we're finding are really tough, slow composting items like the seed of an avocado and some larger chunks of maybe, I don't know, maybe avocado peel or something like that, but really no other signs of any other food in here. Little bits of bedding and stuff. This might be part of a mango seed, the outer husk of a mango seed. So I'm thinking, maybe I will just give it one quick little squirt. I do have a little bit of water here on hand. And we'll give it one more stir. Then we can get to the business of reassembling this the way we want it for the ongoing baiting of the mites. But I'm starting to get this feeling like we might actually be approaching the end here. At least I hope so. Just going to dampen some of the material on this side and cover it with drier stuff. Just trying to avoid having half of the stuff that was just dampened stick to my glove. Maybe we can spray some of this stuff down on this side. And similarly, combine it with some dry right away so as not to have it all just end up on my glove. Yeah, you know, I guess just by mixing a lot of that dry stuff off the surface down into the nice damper stuff down low, I guess we are in effect drying out the entire contents. All that stuff that had nice moisture content to it earlier has probably suddenly lost it by transferring some of it over to the more dry material. So this little injection of extra moisture is probably doing the bin good. Okay, lots of avocado pits in here, I'm noticing. Okay, we got the DE, we got the H2O. This will restore this piece of mango seed husk in here too. And then we can get to reassembling our baiting station. We're going to, I guess we're also going to take this little piece of melon that the worms are feasting on and just let the worms have it at this point down low. And then at the end here, all we have left to do is restore our baiting area. Let's go grab that piece of fresh melon for the top over here. Like we did before, I'm going to give the whole shebang a little push down, just so our plastic cover does in fact rest on the surface all the way around. And well, same story here. This paper isn't doing a whole lot. Just sitting here looking pretty. And not even that, that's for sure. Someday when we get back to doing regular feedings, I'll just use this stuff as bedding to go hand in hand with the food. So, this was a little bit more work today. Replacing the more or less depleted melon bits that have been doing a good job rounding the mites up. addressing what I thought was a pretty dire moisture situation over in the VermiBag Tote, and even peppering in a little bit of DE just to see if that might help situation here too. So we're pretty much done for the day, and the saga continues. But I'm starting to get this feeling like we're getting pretty close to the finish line at this point. So hopefully our mite situation here in these African night crawler bins will be resolved soon, and then we can get back to treating these bins like everyday bins and feeding them again. I mean, geez, after 24 days, I believe, maybe 25 days since these bins were last fed, these bins are going to, yeah, these worms are going to appreciate a good hearty feeding when it's time to give them one finally again. All right, everyone, that's it. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please remember to leave me a thumbs up. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, also consider subscribing to the channel too. That's really appreciated as well. All right, everyone, thanks so much for watching. Have a great day. Bye.